In 1944, in a place located in the South Pacific, two Air Force pilots from two countries at war continue their battle on the coastline after their planes both make an emergency landing. Eventually, a giant creature appears, stopping the fight. The scene then shows human life evolving year by year, especially in the field of technology. Additionally, humans continue to explore to find uncharted places, even reaching the moon. All these developments make human life more peaceful, but it is still overshadowed by war, or what we know as the Cold War. One day in 1973, a massive protest occurs where American citizens firmly reject the war and demand the government withdraw troops from Vietnam. Amid the demonstration, two men, Bill Randa and Houston Brooks, from a government agency called Monarch that searches for alien life, visit the Senate to request exploration permission. Although the preparations are incomplete, they must submit the request because it will be harder to get approval once the Cold War ends and competition fades. Senator Al Willis refuses 5 meetings with Monarch, considering discussions about monsters mere fantasy. This time, Bill meets Al directly without an appointment and explains the discovery of a satellite in the South Pacific, Skull Island, a legendary location full of mysteries like the Bermuda Triangle. Bill reveals that the Castle Bravo program aimed to kill something related to the destruction of the USS Lawton, and he believes Skull Island is where myth meets science. Houston adds that a Russian satellite will soon pass over the location, prompting Al to grant exploration permission. The Landsat team, escorted by military forces under Colonel Preston Packard, prepares to head to Skull Island. Bill also recruits James Conrad, a former British airman and professional tracker, whom he meets at a bar in Saigon after James defeats 2 thugs. James demands a high fee and a bonus if the mission succeeds, which Houston immediately approves. With limited information about Skull Island, they rely on James's jungle survival experience. The Landsat group invites a renowned photographer, Mason Weaver. Mason is highly experienced in the field, even in war zones. The departure is scheduled for tomorrow at 6 p.m. aboard the USS Athena. Everyone is asked to gather at a dock in Bangkok. Mason looks very enthusiastic, curious about Skull Island, especially after hearing information from 3 different people about its inhabitants. Tomorrow afternoon, as the ship leaves the dock, Victor Neves, the Landsat commander, explains that Skull Island is hidden by an eternal storm. With Colonel Preston's team helicopter, they will be the first to visit it. Victor introduces the expedition team, Bill as the commander, Houston the geologist, and San Lin the biologist. They will map the island using seismic bombs for scientific research. Since communication may be disrupted, they must be self-sufficient. 3 days later, the support team arrives with fuel, food, and assistance to continue the exploration. Feeling suspicious, James checks the storage area to learn more about the seismic bombs. He meets Mason, who once had a relationship with him. They share their reasons for being on the ship and discover they share the same opinion that the bombs are unnecessary. The next morning, the ship faces the storm. Victor becomes frightened and cancels the mission, determined not to go to the island. However, not long after, for unknown reasons, he boards a helicopter to join the Fox expedition team. In a tense moment, they search for a gap to break through the storm. Colonel Preston keeps shouting prayers while encouraging the pilots. Finally, they break through the storm and see a beautiful, untouched island. Sadly, it is the team's actions that pollute it. Shortly after landing, Houston and the Landsat team instruct the soldiers to drop seismic bombs, causing explosions everywhere. Suddenly, a tree shoots like a spear, striking a helicopter and causing it to crash. Moments later, a giant ape-like figure appears, using immense strength to smash all the Fox team's helicopters. Colonel Preston watches as his troops are slaughtered. Out of 9, only 4 Fox team members survive. They now land at different locations across the island. Tim James, consisting of Mason, Houston, Victor, Sun Lin, and Slivko, is in the southern region of the island. Since the radio communication does not work, James suggests following the river path to reach the aerial pickup point. After that, they will contact the ship. Meanwhile, Preston contacts his men, including Jack Chapman, who is in the western region. Preston says he is heading there not only to pick up Jack, but also to retrieve what Jack's group carries to kill the creature that slaughtered them. On the way, Preston meets another team, including Glenn Mills, Earl Cole, and Bill. Preston immediately threatens to shoot Bill in the head unless he explains what is really happening. Bill reveals everything he knows, starting from the USS Lawton shipwreck, where he was the only survivor who knew what destroyed the ship. Bill has spent 30 years trying to prove that ancient species ruled Earth long before humans and will act to reclaim it. Bill expresses condolences for Preston's fallen men, but insists their priority is to gather evidence and return to send reinforcements. Houston and Sun Lin confirm Bill Randa's hollow Earth theory, explaining that vast underground chambers are isolated from the Earth's surface. Bill believes one such chamber exists on Skull Island, where ancient species emerge from underground. During their journey, both groups encounter giant creatures. James's group encounters a herbivorous creature that remains harmless unless provoked. In contrast, Preston's group is attacked by a vicious carnivorous monster resembling a spider-crab hybrid. The soldiers narrowly escape becoming prey by cutting the creature's legs, while Preston's gunfire ensures the predator is killed. Back with James, they are shocked to see stone formations resembling a portal, and are suddenly surrounded by tribal warriors. As a fight is about to break out, an elderly man named Hank Marlow, a U.S. Air Force lieutenant stranded for 28 years, appears and calms the situation. Hank invites them to seek shelter in the settlement as night approaches, since no one wants to be in the jungle after dark. At the settlement, Hank explains the history of the Iwi tribe and the terrifying creatures attacking them. For thousands of years, the Iwi lived in terror of these beasts until one day, a miracle happened. A giant creature protected them, becoming both their king and god. His name is Kong. Kong protects the tribe from terrifying monsters called skull crawlers, giant aggressive lizard-like creatures that emerge from underground. The bombing awakened these monsters, which explains Kong's fury when the expedition dropped the bombs. While Kong can easily defeat smaller crawlers, it is a different story if a larger one appears. That creature wiped out Kong's entire family, leaving him to live alone. The tribe hopes Kong continues to grow stronger to protect them. If Kong dies, a massive skull crawler will emerge, bringing disaster to the Iwi tribe. Meanwhile, in the west, Jack Chapman, who is alone, encounters Kong again. However, the ape does not notice Jack as it is busy observing the wound on its arm. After eating a giant squid, the creature leaves the river. Again, Preston kills another strange creature, this time an ugly bird. Glenn, Cole, and Reilly notice that Preston is so determined to kill Kong that he neglects his own safety and the safety of his men. James explains their plan to escape and invites Hank to join them. However, the old man laughs, saying no one can walk to the north. He shows them the Gray Fox, a boat he built with his comrade, Gunpei Ikari. They spent 6 years building the boat to escape the island. Unfortunately, just as they were almost done, a crawler attack killed Gunpei, so Hank decided to return and settle with the Iwi tribe, hoping for rescue. While the men repair the boat, Mason bonds with the Iwi tribe and takes pictures with his camera. Mason also helps a buffalo that is trapped under the helicopter. Suddenly, the helicopter lifts on its own. It turns out that Mason has received help from the tribe's guardian god, Kong. The Preston group finds Kong's trail. The man becomes more excited upon learning about Kong's injured condition. Jack is suddenly attacked by a creature the Iwi tribe calls the Devil. At night, after finishing the ship repairs, everyone prepares to depart the next morning. Meanwhile, James enjoys the Aurora view with Mason. Preston and his men also witness the same view. Preston insists that he never runs from enemies. Therefore, whatever happens, he will kill Kong, and Bill is free to leave if he disagrees with the plan. The next morning, both teams continue their journey after saying goodbye at Gunpei's grave and to the Iwi tribe. James's team navigates the river using the Gray Fox. Hank is eager to meet his wife and child, but he does not expect much. Seeing them once would be more than enough. Meanwhile, Preston's team continues following Kong's tracks. Suddenly, communication is restored, and after Slivko explains their situation, Preston fires a flare to signal their location. However, Victor is suddenly captured and killed by a group of predatory birds. A few hours later, the two groups meet. However, they are not going north but west, as Preston cannot abandon his men. According to Hank, going west would be like suicide, as it is the territory of the crawlers. Though others disagree, James' heroic nature compels him to follow Preston's plan. In return, James asks Preston to promise that he will return if they do not find Jack, with the deadline being before evening. Hank points to a valley filled with bones and says, "The smell of death comes from there. It is Kong's family tomb, and the location of the helicopter crash is beyond that valley, in the crawlers' territory." They begin walking among the giant bones, trying to find signs of Jack Chapman. Suddenly, an explosion occurs, and shortly after, a roar makes them all hide. It turns out Hank's suspicion was correct. One of the crawlers arrives, then vomits the remnants of its food, one of which is Jack's skull. The creature also deceives the expedition group, then devours the soldiers and Bill. The predator birds make things worse. James uses his fighting skills with Gunpei Ikari's sword. The hunter slashes at the birds, saving Slivko, and with Mason's help, they manage to take down the demon. It is pointless to try to bring Preston to his senses. Learning of Jack's death only fuels his rage. Therefore, separating from him is a wise decision rather than fighting and killing each other. Sometime later, Preston finds Jack's last letter pinned to a tree. Jack asks Mills to ensure the letter reaches his son, Billy. Not far from there, they finally find the Sea Stallion helicopter. All soldiers are asked to prepare traps, as they will soon kill the king. Back to James and Mason, the two leave the group to climb to higher ground to find the river's path. That night, Mason is approached by Kong for the second time. The ape doesn't rage, but may be enchanted by Mason's beauty. Suddenly, an explosion is heard from the west, making Kong extremely angry. James quickly urges Mason to return to the group and asks Houston and Sun Lin to head back to the boat, while he, Mason, and Hank will try to stop Preston to save Kong. Kong is lured into Preston's trap. After rampaging for a while, the ape falls. Preston immediately orders his soldiers to set the explosives. Once all the bombs are in place, James's group suddenly appears, threatening and demanding Preston stop his actions. This time, Slivko and the other soldiers turn to side with James, but Preston remains stubborn. Eventually, he is killed by Kong, who rises after the crawler appears. Kong's weakened condition is a great advantage for the crawler. The creature immediately pursues James's group after bringing Kong down. Upon reaching the island's edge, James asks Mason to fire a flare from the rocks as a signal to Houston. James and the soldiers try to buy time. Realizing his efforts are in vain, Cole tells everyone to leave because he intends to blow himself up with the crawler. However, the clever demon lashes its tail, sending Cole crashing into a cliff. Kong's return starts the epic battle between the two giant monsters who rule Skull Island. Though tangled in the ship's chain, Kong does not give up. With the humans' help, the ape rises again and defeats the skull crawler that killed his kin, saving Mason, who was thrown into the river during the fight. The film ends by showing James's group and the three surviving soldiers heading to the pickup point. A few days later, a very emotional scene shows Hank returning home to meet his wife and grown-up son. Unfortunately, James and Mason's ending is not as happy as Hank's, especially when they learn from Houston and Sun Lin that Skull Island is just the beginning. There are many more places like that out there, and Kong is not the only king. Houston shows some pictures to support his statement. Is Earth not owned by humans? And when will the kings take the world back? The story ends.